Hi everyone, I'm Hextasy, and today we'll be playing through a hardcore Nuzlocke of FireRed, only using Pokemon that I personally feel I could beat in a fight. In general, that's going to restrict me to a lot of unevolved Pokemon, but if a fully evolved Pokemon is small enough or has big enough weaknesses, then I'll be able to consider catching it. And on top of that, we've randomized all the Pokemon, items, and what's in the TMs. Getting right into the game, our choices for starters are Mudkip, Abra, and Seedot, all of whom I would destroy in hand-to-hand combat. But when they evolve, that's when things start to change. I would get absolutely bodied by a Swampert, and I don't stand a chance against Alakazam's psychic shenanigans. But Shiftry is absolutely something I can handle. It has a ton of hair for me to grab onto, and with those feet, it won't be able to keep its balance and go down. Easy dub. So we pick Seedot and name him Yamcha. Our rival picks Abra, and we just have to spam Harden until it runs out of teleport power points and has to resort to struggle. We can then use Bide to send back twice as much damage as we take, and we quickly come out on top. On Route 1, the first Pokemon we see, a Tailo, kills Yamcha, forcing us to restart the run. Awesome. Attempt number 2, and our starter options are Cleffa, Azurill, and Weedle. Weedle is instantly out because even if I have a chance at beating a Beedrill, I'm not risking it. Clefable and Azumarill, on the other hand, would be punching bags to me, and knowing Azurill has no offensive moves at level 5, that leaves us with taking Cleffa, who we name Sakura, and she pounds our rival's Weedle into oblivion, easily winning the fight. Cleffa then proceeds to not only not die to the first Pokemon she sees on Route 1, but we catch it too, a Wingull named Yamcha 2. At Route 2, we catch Mr. Satan the Hoot Hoot. Route 22 nets us Mai the Leddyba, and in the Viridian Forest, we find Smoker the Azurill, who immediately gets arena trapped by a Diglett and dies. Luckily, we won't need him to be our rival a second time. They have a Leddyba now, but it's handled by Mr. Satan, and Weedle is once again pounded by Sakura. And after that, we need to take on the first gym leader, Brock, who is now a Dark-type trainer that starts with Houndour, while we bring in Wingull. We're easily able to take out the dog with a couple water guns, and his next Pokemon is Mightyena. It starts to use Howl to boost its attack while we try to land Supersonic to confuse it. The first misses, but the second hits, and Mightyena immediately hits itself. We then switch to using Water Gun, but Mightyena quickly snaps out of confusion and goes for a Sand attack, but thanks to our Keen Eye ability, we aren't affected. Mightyena finally decides to start doing damage with Bite, but it's far too late and it goes down to a Water Gun, winning us our first gym badge. We then mosey on over to Route 3 where we find Krillin the Pidgey. In Mount Moon, we find Jessie the Sandshrew, and finally at Route 4, we get Porcupine the Shedinja. Now you might be wondering, how can I, a mere human, beat the ghost bug that steals people's souls? Allow me to demonstrate. Homie only has 1 HP, there's no way I'm losing. I also find out Move Tutor and TM compatibility doesn't change even if the move taught does. This gives us the option to teach moves to Pokemon that normally wouldn't get them, like teaching Beat Up to Cleffa. We can then start evolving some of our Pokemon, and while I don't think I would stand a chance against a fully evolved Pidgeot, I do think I'll be able to occasionally win against it while it's still a Pidgeotto. We then have our third rival battle, and he still has a full Bug-type team, but with our plethora of flying types, he doesn't stand a chance. We head across Nugget Bridge and find Owl the Caterpie at Route 24, and Toad the Shroomish at Route 25, and now we get to take on the second gym leader, Misty, who's now a normal type trainer who starts with Clefairy, while we bring in the newly evolved Owl. We land a Poison Powder while they miss Sing, and we can then swap to Mai, who brings Clefairy down to the wire before being put to sleep by Sing. Clefairy goes down to poison damage, and next in is Misty's new ace, Clefable. We bring Owl in as Clefable uses Minimize to increase its evasiveness, but luckily our first Poison Powder lands, so it can only avoid us for so long now. We bring in Sakura, who knows Magical Leaf, an attack guaranteed to hit, and Clefable soon goes down, earning us the second gym badge. We then head to Route 5 where we find Baraka, the male Nidoran, and at Route 6 we grab DDD, the Execute. Also at the underground path, we talk to the girl who normally wants to trade Nidorans, but now she wants us to give her a Celebi, and she's offering up a Spheal. Seems like a fair trade, we'll do it if we ever find a Celebi. Once in Vermilion City, we grab the fishing rod so we can fish up Cyrus the Magikarp in the city, and Metapod the Kakuna at the SS Anne. At Route 11, we meet Bellamy the Oddish, and in the Diglett's Cave, we find Lemmy the Spheal, who murders Owl before we can catch it. And to think we'd still have our Butterfree if we had just forked over the legendary time-traveling onion to that little girl. Soon after, we evolve Bellamy into Gloom, and we can take on our rival for the 4th time. Krillin is easily able to take out his first few Pokemon, but he brings in a Misdreavus, and it brings confusion shenanigans to the table. That gives us a little trouble, but we were never really in danger of losing anyone, and we quickly win. Our next battle is up against the now Bug Gym Leader, Lieutenant Surge. He opens with Anorith while we bring out the Krill Dog. Our first gust brings Anorith down to just over half of its HP, and it uses Harden to boost its defense. Another gust brings it down to a third, and it hits us with a scratch for very little damage, and one more gust takes it out. Next in is Paris, and it's already dead, and in comes Surge's new ace, Scyther. It outspeeds us and uses Focus Energy, increasing its critical hit rate, and our Gust just barely fails to take out half of its HP. It hits us with a False Swipe, not doing a lot of damage, and we retaliate with Gust, just missing the KO. He heals up with a Super Potion, and we trade blows back and forth a couple more times. We're brought down to just 7 HP, but we can land one more Gust for the KO, winning our 3rd badge. We can then go on a small catching spree while heading towards Celadon City, but we don't catch anything useful until we arrive at Route 7, where we find Shiva, the female Nidoran, and in the Celadon Game Corner, we buy Alvida, the Lotad. We can then head back to Lavender Town for the 5th rival battle. He brings in Skiploom, which I'm going to quickly learn is the most irritating Pokemon to go up against, with its combination of Sleep Powder and Leech Seed. But after what feels like an eternity, we take it out with Baraka. The next Pokemon our rival brings in is a friggin' Moltres. But we swap to Yamcha 2, who has evolved into a Pelipper, and a few Water Guns takes it out. Togetic is in next, and it's determined to be just as annoying as Skiploom, with moves like Yawn and Sweet Kiss to confuse us. But we power through and take it out with a Wing Attack. Kakuna is in next, chilling 15 levels past when it should have evolved into Beedrill, and it quickly goes down. Finally, he brings out Delibird, and it isn't able to damage Yamcha 2 before it goes down, winning us the fight. Our first fight with Team Rocket's Giovanni is next, and he brings in Metang while we start with Mr. Satan. Luckily, we found a Dragon Rage TM that Mr. Satan could learn, so Metang doesn't stand a chance and goes down to 2 attacks. Scizor is in next, and we take the first turn to set up a Reflect, while they use Agility to double their speed. They hit us with a Pursuit for a little damage, and we land Dragon Rage, and it's looking like it'll be a 3-hit KO. Scizor uses Agility again for some reason on the next turn, and Dragon Rage brings it to the brink of defeat, and it uses False Swipe, not doing much, and one more Dragon Rage finishes it off. His final Pokemon is Beldum, and a couple Dragon Rages is enough to earn us the win. We now need to make our way through Erica's now Rock-type gym, and Alvida ends up getting murdered by a sus tree, scoring a critical hit with Flail. Great. After a little more training, we can take on Erica. She starts with Omastar, and we bring in Lemmy, who we immediately switch out for Bellamy, who's now evolved into Vileplume, and we're hit by Bite. Absorb on the next turn wipes out half of its HP and completely heals us, and they just use Withdraw. So we can take it out with one more Absorb on the next turn, and next in is Aerodactyl. It misses a Supersonic, and we land a Stun Spore, paralyzing it. But she uses a full heal before we land an Absorb for very little damage. We land another Stun Spore, and they use Agility to raise their speed back up. But we still outspeed and land another Absorb before they land an Ancient Power and get the 10% chance to boost all of their stats. Fantastic. We swap out to Sakura as it uses Supersonic and lands it, confusing us. Ancient Power wipes out more than half of our HP, but our Cute Charm ability activates. We land a Magical Leaf, and Aerodactyl's odds of actually being able to attack us are pretty low now, so we stay in and go for another Magical Leaf, but Aerodactyl, despite the odds, is able to attack, and it takes out Sakura with an Ancient Power. Shiva is brought in next, and Ancient Power wipes out more than half of our HP before we land a Double Kick. Not doing much, so we have to swap out again. Baraka is in next, and Ancient Power nearly takes him out. But now they should be out of power points for Ancient Power, so we can bring in Yamcha too, who brings it low with Water Gun, but Erica heals it up with a Hyper Potion. We then get absolutely screwed over by Flinch and Confusion shenanigans and have to swap out once again. We bring in Lemmy on a Bite, and we're able to finish off Aerodactyl with 2 more Water Guns, but not before getting confused. Her final Pokemon is Pupitar, so we swap into Bellamy on a Sandstorm, and a couple Absorbs takes it out, winning us the fight. We can then head back to Lavender Town, where we catch Toadette the Paris in the Pokemon Tower, and while we're there, we can take on the Marowak Ghost, which has been randomized into a Marowak. Maybe it didn't actually get randomized, but it might have also just been a coincidence. Anyways, with that out of the way, we can rescue Mr. Fuji and receive the Poke Flute. So we can wake up the Snorlax that turns out to actually be a Weedle, but we don't catch it since we already have a Kakuna. And the other Snorlax is now a Golem. You could give me a year of prep time and I still don't think I could beat this thing in a fight. Lemmy evolves into a Celio, but won't be evolving further. No way I'm fighting a Walrein. We then start heading towards Fuchsia City and catch several Pokemon on the way there. At Route 12, we get Squalla the Shuppet. Route 13 gives us Leorio the Natu. Route 14 is a Venonat that we won't be able to evolve. And that brings us to Route 15. The last thing you'd want on a new route is for your first viable encounter to be something you can't evolve. But as it turns out, that might be what you get. While there's nothing that can stop me from bashing Baltoy's goofy ass head in with a rock, Claydol is another story. It's a giant flying clay statue that shoots lasers, a known weakness of humans like me. Admittedly, it doesn't have arms, but that's even worse, because I will have nothing to hold on to if I try to grapple it. I think I'll stick with my Baltoy and move on to the next town. On the other side of Fuchsia, we find Whole Horse the Marowak, who I feel I could beat a solid 60% of the time thanks to my size advantage. We then arrive at the Safari Zone, where we find the Thick Club, a Marowak exclusive item that will turn Whole Horse into the whole package. But While we're there, we also catch a Nuzlocke, who we name Yamcha 2.0. And for the final new Pokemon, we can head to the Fighting Dojo, where we have the option to receive Seal or Krabby. And we decide to roll with Seal, who we name the Lord of the Coast, or Lot C for short. With all of that out of the way, we can take on our rival for the 6th time. He starts with Poliwrath, and we bring in Squalla, who's evolved into a Bayonet, a short king who can do nothing to stop itself from catching these hands. We outspeed and hit Poliwrath with a Will-O-Wisp, burning it before it can hit us with a Water Gun. We then land a couple Nightshades to take it out, and next in is his Ace Beedrill. It hits us with a Pursuit, bringing Bayonet to the brink of death before we land a Will-O-Wisp. We try to swap out, hoping that it'll just use some random move, seeing that anything could KO us at this point, but we have no such luck, and Squalla dies to a Pursuit. Lemmy comes in and hits Beedrill hard with a Surf, but before we can take it out, our rival brings in a second Poliwrath, and it's immune to Surf. It then hits Lemmy with a Hypnosis, putting us to sleep before hitting us hard with a Submission, and we have to switch out. We bring in Leorio on a submission, and we're able to set up a Future Sight before being put to sleep. We're hit by a few Water Guns before Future Sight finally lands, and the results are incredibly underwhelming. Leorio refuses to wake up and is brought to 9 HP, so we have to swap out for Bellamy, and a couple absorbs ends Poliwrath. Beedrill comes in and is able to land a couple Pursuits, but it goes down pretty quickly, and in comes Machamp. Absorb hardly does any damage, and Seismic Toss takes out a decent chunk of our HP. We switch to using Poison Fang, which does a lot more, but it then hits us with a Revenge, leaving us in poor shape, and we need to switch out. Whole Horse comes in on a Vital Throw, losing about a third of his HP before we can land a Bone Meringue for the KO. And our rival's final Pokemon is Breloom. We hit it with a Strength, which it barely survives, and retaliates with Counter for the KO. Great, I wasted all my money on juicing up this orphan, and he gets murked by a Mushroom Kangaroo. We bring the Lord of the Coast in, who survives a Mach Punch with 69 HP, nice, and an Aurora Beam finishes Breloom and wins us the fight. Let's see what the gift Lapras randomized to. Walrein. Amazing. Right after, we have our second fight with Giovanni, and he brings in Mawile to take on Mr. Satan, who quickly takes it out with Dragon Rages while barely taking any damage. Magneton is in next, and Dragon Rage takes out less than half of its HP before we're hit hard by a Spark, bringing us below half HP. We then swap out to Porcupine, who Magneton has no way of damaging, and while we do get paralyzed, we quickly take out Magneton with a Shadow Ball. Aggron is in next, and it uses Roar, forcibly swapping out Porcupine for Bellamy, who then gets roared out, and Leorio comes in, who then gets roared out, and Bellamy is back in, who then gets roared out, and Porcupine is back in, who then gets roared out, and Leorio comes back in. Aggron then starts spamming Protect, saving it twice from being taken out by Nightshade, but the third one hits, taking it down. His final Pokemon is another Magneton, so we're safe to bring Porcupine back in, who nets us the win after a couple more turns. While we're in Saffron City, we can take on Sabrina, who has become a Ghost-type trainer. She starts with Sableye, and we bring in Yamcha 2.0. Sableye uses Detect, protecting it for a turn, but that just gives us a safe chance to use Growth, boosting our special attack, and Sableye, along with the 3 Gengar that follow, all go down to a single Feint attack, earning us another badge. We head back to Fuchsia to take on Koga, the Flying-type gym leader. He starts with a Xatu, and we bring in the Lord of the Coast, who takes it out with an Aurora Beam. Next, he brings in our nemesis, Jumpluff. It outspeeds us and hits us with a Sleep Powder, so we can't move and get hit by a leech seed and a cotton spore before we wake up and take out Jumpluff with an Aurora Beam. Gyarados is in next, and it hits us hard with a Dragon Rage before we hit an Icy Wind to lower its speed. It's unlikely we'll survive another attack, so we swap out for Bellamy, who takes very little damage from Bite. We trade Poison Fangs and Dragon Rages back and forth, but after a critical hit, Bellamy comes out on top, and in comes Koga's new ace Pokemon, a Noctowl. We bring in Lemmy as Noctowl uses a Reflect, and then outspeeds us, putting us to sleep with Hypnosis. We have to tank a couple takedowns, but we quickly wake up and land an Aurora Beam, bringing Noctowl down to about half HP. We're put back to sleep and hit by another takedown, but we wake up earlier this time and finish it with an Aurora Beam, granting us our 6th badge. We then head south to Route 19, where we don't find anything we can catch, but we do find the mythical underwater fire unicorn. But at the Seafoam Islands, we find a Togepi, and at Route 21 we catch a Sunflora. We arrive at Cinnabar Island, where we can see what our fossils revive into. Caterpie, well, we already had a Butterfree. Heracross, no shot on beating it. So we walk outside the lab where we fish up a Cacnea. While I would have a hard time getting past its spikes, if I can find a 2x4 or big stick, this cactus is going to be annihilated. And in the Pokemon Mansion, we find Tien, the Trico, who we quickly evolve into a Sceptile. It might seem iffy, but Sceptile and I are roughly the same height and weight, and the anime has shown it loses the ability to use moves when it gets depressed. As far as I'm concerned, it's a fair fight. Anyways, we can take on Blaine, the now Psychic-type gym leader. He starts with a Slowking, and we bring in Tien. We land a Leaf Blade, just missing the KO, and we're hit by a Swagger, confusing us so we need to swap out. We bring in Toadette as Blaine heals up with a Hyper Potion, but we can then outspeed it and put it to sleep with Spore, and get the KO after a couple slashes. Exeggutor is in next, and we hit it with a Leech Life, removing half of its HP before being put to sleep ourselves by Hypnosis. It starts wailing on us with Confusion, bringing us below half HP before we wake up and take Exeggutor out with Leech Life. And it brings us back a pretty decent amount of HP. A second Exeggutor is in next, but this time it misses the Hypnosis after Leech Life restores most of our HP. If one of us has to go to sleep, I pick them and we hit them with a Spore. Blaine then heals his Exeggutor, and we're able to bring it to the brink of death with Leech Life, but it hits us with a Hypnosis, putting us to sleep. So we just swap out to Tien, and a Pursuit defeats Exeggutor. And Blaine's final Pokemon is Chimecho, who goes down to a Mega Drain followed by a Leaf Blade, earning us our 7th badge. Our final fight with Giovanni, the Steel Trainer, is next, and he starts with Aggron, while we bring in the Lord of the Coast. It protects itself from our first attack, but a second Surf takes it out. Fortress is in next, and we hit it with a Super Fang to cut its HP in half before it uses Bide. But Surf on the next turn takes it out before it can do damage. Mawile is in next, but a single Surf takes it out, and Scizor follows after, but our Surf is a critical hit and is a one-hit KO. His final and ace Pokemon is a Metagross, but we hit it with a Super Fang, removing half of its HP, and it responds with a Scary Face, cutting our speed, so it moves first next and hits us with a Psychic, removing a quarter of our HP, and our Surf just misses out on the KO. Knowing he's going to use a Hyper Potion, we go for his Super Fang, bringing Metagross back down to half HP. Psychic brings us to half, and we land another Super Fang, reducing it to a quarter HP. A final Psychic hits us hard, but we survive, and a Surf takes out Metagross, earning our final gym badge. Afterwards, we have our 7th rival battle to deal with. He starts with a Skarmory, and we decide to let the Lord of the Coast continue his rampage. Skarmory is only able to get up a single layer of spikes before going down to Surf, and next in is a friggin' Jumpluff. It puts us asleep, flings its seed at us, and hits us with a Mega Drain, but we wake up and an Ice Beam gets the one-hit KO. Xatu is in next, so we swap out to Yamcha 2.0 as it sets up a Wish, but Feint Attack takes it out in one hit, and next in is Articuno. We bring the Lord of the Coast back in as it uses Agility to boost its speed, and we use Rest to restore our HP, and Articuno can barely damage us, since its only damaging move is Powder Snow. A few Surfs takes it out, and Xatu is in next, but Ice Beam takes it out, and his Ace Beedrill is in last. It deals quite a bit of damage with Endeavor, but because that move can't KO, we were never in any danger, and it goes down pretty quickly, winning us the fight. We can then catch our last couple Pokemon of the run. Just outside of Victory Road at Route 23, we find a Clefable who we name Sakura 2.0, and inside Victory Road, we find a Psyduck who we can't evolve since Golduck is built like a brick house. We also head to the power plant to see what Zapdos randomized into, hopefully a Celebi so we can finally get that Spheal, but it's just a Moltres. We also take on the Sevi Island side quest just so we can go to Mount Ember to see what Moltres becomes, and it's a Kyogre now. We can still check on Articuno, but I don't feel like going through the Seafoam Islands, so we just go through Victory Road. And our final team for the Elite Four will be Yamcha 2.0, the Shiftry, Tien, the Sceptile, Sakura 2.0, the Clefable, Lord of the Coast, the Dugong, Toadette, the Parasect, and Leorio, the Xatu. So let's get to it. Starting with Lorelei, who brings in Houndoom against Yamcha 2.0. So she's either a Fire or Dark-type trainer now. We use Magnitude and roll a 7, dealing just enough damage for the KO, and Magmar is in next, confirming she's a Fire-type trainer. We land another Magnitude 7, but it isn't enough to get the KO, and we're hit by a Smokescreen. We switch out for Lord of the Coast as she heals up Magmar, and on the following turn we can outspeed it and take it out with a single Surf. A second Houndoom is in next, and Surf just misses the KO, and we're hit by a pretty weak Feint Attack. One more Surf gets the KO, and a Charizard is in next. Surf isn't enough to get the KO, and it misses a Scary Face. We're a little worried about conserving power points here, so we go for Ice Beam, taking out less than half of its HP after she heals it, but another Surf takes it out. Her final Pokemon is Typhlosion, and since it has the same stat line as Charizard, I know we won't get the one-hit KO, so we go for a Super Fang. Typhlosion outspeeds us and hits us with a Flame Wheel, not doing a lot of damage, and we miss our Super Fang. We're hit by one more Flame Wheel before we land a second Super Fang, removing half of its HP, and its Citrus Berry heals it up a bit. To be on the safe side, we land one more Super Fang before we finish it off with a Surf, winning us the first fight of the Elite Four. Bruno is next, and he starts with Sableye, so maybe he's the Dark-type trainer now. We bring in Yamcha 2.0, and use a Growth as it hits us with a Confuse Ray. We just choose to fight through it and hammer away at it with Mega Drains. We do hit ourselves in Confusion once, and its Shadow Ball lowers our special defense before we can take it out. Next in is Dusclops, confirming he's not a Dark-type trainer, and we take it out with a single Feint Attack. And none of his following Pokemon can survive a single Feint Attack either. Banette, Misdreavus, and Misdreavus number 2 all go down, making for an easy fight. Next up is Bertha, the Ground-type Elite Four member. She starts with Golem, and we bring in Sakura 2.0. We land an Icy Wind, wiping out more than half of its HP, and it retaliates with an Earthquake, dealing quite a bit of damage, and a second Icy Wind takes it out. Nidoking is in next, and it outspeeds us and lands a Mega Horn. taking out half of our remaining HP, and we land a critical hit Icy Wind that leaves it with seemingly 1 HP. She uses a full restore on the next turn, giving us another opportunity to land an Icy Wind, bringing it below half HP. We then switch to the Lord of the Coast, who has to tank a Mega Horn, losing close to a quarter of its HP. But we can then land an Ice Beam and get the KO. Flygon is in next, and it sets up a Sandstorm before getting shot down by an Ice Beam. And in comes Swampert. We switch out to TN as they waste their turn protecting. We go for a Leaf Blade, and it uses Protect again, but a second Leaf Blade gets through, taking it out in one shot, proving Sceptile as the superior Gen 3 starter, if you ignore the level difference in type advantage. And in comes Bertha's final Pokemon, Gligar. But a couple Leaf Blades takes it out, winning us the fight. The final Elite Four member is Lance, who starts with an Omastar as we bring in Sakura 2.0. We go for a Karate Chop, but Omastar protects. It tries to protect a second time, but we land our Karate Chop, which hardly does any damage. So we switch out for Yamcha 2.0, who gets tickled, lowering his attack and defense. It uses Protect, but we use Growth to boost our special attack, and a Mega Drain takes it out. Sharpedo is in next, but we outspeed and take it out with a Mega Drain, and the Quagsire that follows suffers the same fate. Tentacruel is in next, and it hits us with a Hydro Pump, dealing a pretty decent amount of damage before we land a Magnitude 8, wiping away half of its HP. Another Hydro Pump lands, and we use Feint Attack, which just misses the KO. Lance heals up Tentacruel as we land another Feint Attack, and we're brought below half HP before we can land another attack that leaves Tentacruel in poor shape. Hydro Pump brings us to about a fifth of our HP before we finish it off with a Mega Drain, and Lance's final Pokemon is a Gyarados. We immediately swap out for Toadette, who gets hit by a Hyper Beam, losing quite a bit of her HP. But Gyarados can't move, and we're free to get a Spore off, putting it to sleep, and we can start using Giga Drains and Slashes, and we nearly take it out, but Lance uses a full restore to heal it, and on the same turn we land a critical hit Slash that leaves Gyarados in poor shape. It then sets up a Rain Dance for some reason before nearly going down to Slash, and it lands one more Hyper Beam, not doing nearly enough to take out Toadette, and another Slash wins us the fight. And finally, we have our last rival battle to end the run. He starts with a Cradily, while we start with Sakura 2.0. We land an Icy Wind, dealing a decent bit of damage and slowing it before being hit by Confuse Ray. We switch to the Lord of the Coast as it uses Ingrain, so it'll constantly heal, and an Ice Beam doesn't deal quite enough to take it out before it can use Amnesia to double its special defense. But luckily for us, our next Ice Beam is a critical hit which takes it out, and his next Pokemon is another Cradily. Super Fang removes half of its HP, and it uses Amnesia. Great. Another Super Fang brings it low as it uses Ingrain, and an Ice Beam on the next turn leaves it with next to no HP. We're hit by an Ancient Power, dealing quite a bit of damage, and then they heal up with a full restore before we land a Super Fang. We miss the next Super Fang and then get hit by a Confuse Ray, but we choose to power through it and land another Super Fang before being brought to KO range by another Ancient Power. We try to hopefully end it with an Ice Beam, but we hit ourselves in confusion and an Ancient Power kills the Lord of the Coast. Toadette is in next, and we're outsped and hit by a Confuse Ray, and we immediately hit ourselves. They land an Ancient Power, dealing a solid bit of damage, before we land a Jump Kick. Once again, it survives off of nearly nothing. Ancient Power brings us low, but a second Jump Kick takes it out, and his Ace Beedrill is in next, and it outspeeds us, and a Pin Missile takes out Toadette. Leorio comes in next, and a Single Fly takes out Beedrill, and he brings Sceptile in next. We use Fly, but Sceptile protects on the turn we strike, so we use Confuse Ray and go for Fly again. Sceptile hits itself on the turn we strike, and it deals just enough to take it out, and next in is Victory Bell. Our first Fly misses, but we're just hit by a Sweet Scent, lowering our evasiveness. Our second Fly hits, leaving Victory Bell on approximately -7 HP, and it lands a Sleep Powder, which has the surprising effect of putting us to sleep. We switch to Tien as he uses a full restore, and we land a Flamethrower, barely missing the KO, and we get put to sleep. So he's able to heal up, and then he uses Sweet Scent 3 times in a row for some reason before we finally wake up and land a Flamethrower, leaving Victory Bell with a burn before it hits us with a weak Razor Leaf, and then dies to said burn. And his final Pokemon is a second Sceptile. Flamethrower does quite a bit of damage, and it uses Agility before healing up, allowing it to survive one more Flamethrower. They outspeed on the next turn and hit us with a Slam, not doing too much damage, and a final Flamethrower gets the KO, winning us the fight and the run. Well, some of the choices on which Pokemon I can or can't beat were pretty iffy, so leave a comment on any you disagree with, and I'll try to justify my reasons and most likely fail to convince anyone but myself. Anyways, I've been Hextasy, thanks for watching. Also, I forgot I left Toad in the daycare, and he came out at level 43 at the end of the run, so good for him.